Hello, welcome to Monte Carlo Tamale.
We've only really touched upon skin and polyphenols, and we were also going to look at talking about the weight loss
Yeah,
drugs and
yeah,
how popular they are, and the supplement that you've created, which helps people when they're coming off of a weight loss drug. We discussed that, as soon as when you are on something, it's great if it is helping you lose weight, if you've had issues before, but there is, you do lose your muscle mass. And obviously, if people are eating less, we're guessing that probably they're getting less nutrients as well.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, you're 100% right. So when I started looking at the weight loss drugs, it made me realize that there are compounds in food, polyphenols again, but there are polyphenols that upregulate they're called incretin hormones. So GLP-1
Hmm.
and GIP are the things that induce satiety in the diet. The thing is that these molecules are very short-lived in the gut. So they're released, but they're soon removed in the gut. Obviously, these medications the peptides have been slightly modified when you inject them to mean that the half life of these compounds is prolonged in the body. But the reason that these compounds, well, one of the reasons that these compounds are in the gut, the naturally produced compounds in the gut, have a half-life is there's another enzyme which breaks them down, and that's called DPP4. That's the reason that these molecules have a short half-life in the gut. So when I looked at the GLP-1, GIP, like the Manjaros, all those type of drugs, that's the way they work. They don't have any effect on DPP4. So I looked at the polyphenols that might have an effect in terms of upregulating GIP and GLP and identified what those were from the scientific literature. But then it was a bit, I keep going back to these serendipitous like things. It was like, oh, there's this other enzyme called DPP4 that breaks them down. And when I started researching what it might be that inhibited DPP4, I found that there are other polyphenols in foods that actually, some of them were the same ones that upregulated GLP and GIP, but they also inhibited DPP4. So it was a case of, well, let's put those in and let's put some of the other compounds that we haven't got that don't upregulate GLP-1 and GIP and put those in the DPP4 inhibitor box. And then it's like, well, those are the things that the pharmaceuticals are acting upon. And what else can we put in there? So I put in glucomannan from konjac jelly, which is a European Food Standards Agency health claim around it being beneficial for weight management. So it's a gel that when you take it, so that the product I produce is a drink, a powder that you produce a drink, you put it in water. But when you take it, the konjac jelly swells in your stomach, so it makes you feel fuller. So you've got effectively a natural Ozempic accelerator, if you like,
Yeah.
enhancer. And then, but also the other thing that you picked up on is that a lot of people who are losing or trying to lose weight reduce the amount of food that they consume. And so they're going to be very often deficient, or they're going to have deficits in micronutrients as well. So I put micronutrients in there. Some of the things like chromium, for example, have a beneficial effect on blood glucose anyway. So that's the formula. I started working on this last year, and so it was like, oh well, there's a natural like Ozempic alternative for people who don't want to take it, can't afford it, or whatever. It's not going to be as dramatic as Ozempic, but nevertheless, it's something that has a sound rationale. And then in January, there was this BMJ paper published which demonstrated that people who were on these weight loss drugs, um, when they stopped taking them, basically within a year, they put on all the weight that they lost, which is a bit defeatist in a way. And people tend to think that that's down to them. And they don't realize that these drugs actually, they don't treat the underlying causes, the underlying metabolic processes that are responsible for weight gain and weight loss. Again, it was like, well, here's a situation where people could actually use this Goline plus the product I developed as an alternative. to introduce it into their regimen to help them to control, not regain the weight that they've lost.
You're
And
saying a
again,
bit
the
of sort of
more
maintenance almost in a way after they come off.
yeah,
Yeah.
but one of the things that became apparent when I was looking into it, and I've just published a paper on this, is that with people who are on these weight loss drugs tend to lose about 25 to 30% of their weight as muscle mass. Muscle is a really highly metabolic component within your body. So if you lose muscle mass, you lose mitochondrial function. And that means that your body isn't as adept as it could be in terms of handling fats and
Fat burning. Yeah,
carbohydrates.
if you haven't got as much
Yeah.
muscle. Yeah.
Yeah. So they haven't got any. So what happens is that they stop taking these medications. They've lost all this muscle mass. So they haven't got the capacity and the hunger pangs come back very, very quickly, reverting
Get back
back
on
to
the
where they were.
carbs.
Exactly. But the body hasn't got the capacity to handle the carbs and the fats that they're now consuming as it would have done previously. So one of the things so I've developed a protocol that not only says take this product, because I never believe take this product, it's going to solve all your problems. It's a holistic approach. So it's about integrating things like aerobic and anaerobic exercise in to enhance that muscle mass that you've lost. Also about having a healthy diet, having a balanced diet. And the other thing that's really important is having 3 meals a day, because that does, you don't then start snacking. If you have this routine, then your body gets used to that sort of ghrelin, leptin, PYY sort of response that occurs. So
I've heard that you should leave 4 hours of not eating between meals. Does that sound?
yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Have a breakfast, have a lunch, and have a dinner, but it being a balanced type of approach, especially with high protein, because you're wanting to basically build up your muscle mass again.
Yeah.
So you need high levels of protein in there. But the other side of it is, it isn't just about eating well. It's also because these people are now, they're concerned about putting their weight on. It's stress. So the protocol that I've developed isn't just about take this product, it's about exercising, and here's a dietary regime over 30 days, providing people with recipes. This is the amount of protein that you're going to get from your breakfast, lunch, and dinner a day. And this is the number of calories you're going to get. But also it's about incorporating things like breathing exercises into this
Yeah.
protocol
Cortisol
because
levels.
yeah,
Yeah.
controlling your cortisol levels and controlling your stress, and learning how to manage that. And it will be a very stressful process. So it's trying to develop a holistic
Kind of
approach for people.
360 approach, as they
Yeah,
call it.
exactly.
Yeah. And when you talk about protein there, because obviously protein is a huge buzzword, isn't it? Now, we're
Yeah,
especially, I guess I'm more conscious of how it's being sort of really flagged for women of a certain age. Don't lose your protein. What
yeah.
do you think that some people say it's a gram of protein per pound you are, or is there any kind of formula that you think people should follow in terms of how much protein they should eat per day?
It is, yes. So my feeling is that it, you can take protein shakes, obviously, or things like that, but it's with all of these things, you can get, and I hate to use a balanced diet. It's the most misused term ever. That's why I'm saying I've tried to produce, recipes that enable people to get the protein that they need. And it isn't personalized and it never can be. I mean, I could develop an app maybe, but I've tried to make it as broad as I possibly can in terms of protein intake. But yeah, you're right. The protein intake should be titrated to your body mass. It also depends upon, and in this context, body mass, sorry, how much um, muscle mass you've lost, when you're trying to
And how are
regain it.
people
So
gonna be able to measure that? Obviously, you've got those things that you can get at the gym. Is there a way that you can, look at how much muscle you've lost, or is it just physically looking at yourself?
the article that I've published is around practitioners, and it's in those sorts of situations. I think it's working with a professional who knows what they're doing as well, because your body does change, your body shape changes. As you talked about with menopause and things like that. There's all sorts of body changes that are going to occur. It was quite funny. So about a year ago, I was invited to a menopause conference in Greece, and it was at gynecologists. I'm not going to stop them from prescribing HRT and everything. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll look at it's the Mediterranean diet. I'll look at the menopausal women in Greece and what their diet looks like, because they're going to be, I was like, they're going to be consuming a Mediterranean diet. They're not. It was absolutely amazing. They were eating a Western diet. And it was just like, I was thinking, so it does come back to this sort of, processed food, ages, and all the
Well,
rest of it.
you'd
And
think it was
these are
all, lovely seasonal fruit and veg and olive oil, but no.
absolutely, yeah. And if you think this is what people who live on a Mediterranean, potentially a Mediterranean diet are eating compared to what we're eating here. And the other thing is that obviously menopause is a very highly oxidative stress, well, I'm not saying condition, but process that the body goes through.
Yeah.
So you do need to have a really good, like typical Mediterranean diet to help to control that.
Yeah, I didn't take HRT actually, and I did have my hormone levels tested when I thought maybe should I do bioidenticals, but uh,
Yeah.
they said that it wasn't kind of worth it, and I do put it down to the fact that I think I don't drink, I don't smoke, quite conscious of healthy fats and flax seeds. I'm not saying diet alone cures everything, but I do think a lot of women do still drink a lot. I think as they get older, that's not very good for the body to digest. You have got to change your lifestyle, haven't you, really, to listen
Yeah,
to
but
your
the
body.
other side of it is that it's what was your lifestyle like before you went become premenopausal, perimenopausal, and postmenopausal? And if you've been, and some of the work that I've done, which going back now to the situation about the medications and things like that, the pill really does deplete the body of so many micronutrients. And obviously, if people are on HRT as well, then they could have a whole lifetime of a bad diet plus medications that are going to compromise their micronutrient status. So then when they get to menopause, it's like you're not going to reverse 30 years worth of micronutrient deficiencies just by changing your diet when you become
Yeah.
premenopausal,
What do you
perimenopausal, and
think
postmenopausal.
for going back to supplements? I know it's hard to say one size fits all, but when you started doing your research into fatty acids, there's another thing I've heard that, we shouldn't be taking salmon fish oil. We should be taking the DHA, the vegan version, because of microplastics in fish. What's your opinion on that? Because I take a omega-369 and I take fatty
Yeah.
acids daily. One's got flax seeds and one's got fish oil. What do you think
Yeah.
of one
I
versus the
think I
other?
think from that perspective, I think that I mean, I did a lot of work with krill oil, for example. There's still a lot of adverse publicity about krill oil. So with krill oil, as opposed to the fatty acids being in triglyceride format, they're in a phospholipid format, so they're more bioavailable. So I think that there is a difference between the sources of essential fatty acids.
Yeah,
Obviously, the flax seeds got a lot of alpha-linolenic acid, which basically is poorly converted into EPA and DHA. I think the algal oils that you described are good for people who don't want to take fish oils and like you talk about microplastics. The other side of it is that obviously with fish farming and things like antibiotics, things like that,
yeah,
but they are expensive.
yeah,
The price is coming down now, which is good, but they are still very expensive for the average consumer who may not have the amount of disposable income that to buy the premium priced algal oils. Then I'd still go with an anchovy oil or something like that.
yeah. I can
Or
never say
herring
the
oil,
word astaxanthin. I take that.
astaxanthin, yeah.
Never say
But
that.
the whole thing about the pink in the salmon is that so they feed the salmon with astaxanthin to make it pink.
Well, it's like the flamingos, isn't it? The same thing when and
Yeah,
it's a whole full circle, isn't it? Because then they're eating the fish that is pink.
the pinkness is chemically they feed it into the feed that they use. And also the other side of it is, so this is another area that I've looked at is that, sorry, I'm rabbiting on now,
No,
so
no, it's
just
all
tell me
good.
to
It's all
stop.
good.
So the whole thing is that because so a lot of salmon farms, they feed their salmon. They used to historically, salmon are carnivorous, so they will eat other fish. So the levels of EPA and DHA that were in salmon historically would have been the 18-12 ratio or whatever it is that you would not normally associate it with salmon. Well, not with salmon necessarily, but with other fish. What happens is that because fish meal has become so expensive, the fish farmers are now using omega-6 fatty acids to fatten their salmon on. So the fish aren't getting the levels of omega-3s that they would do if they were living as wild salmon. So they're now, so that the whole balance between the omega-3 and 6 ratios has changed in terms of farmed fish versus wild fish.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why it's important to look at the source of the fish oil that you're using, which is why I'm saying, you know, I would say use anchovies or something like that rather than salmon. Because salmon, everybody thinks that all fish oils are the same. Salmon, if you think of it, an 1812 fish oil, EPA and DHA that comes from anchovies, salmon is probably 8 and 10.
And so let's talk about magnesium as well and sleep, because that's another one of the areas and products that you've produced. And I tell everyone like I know, but I say to lots of people, you should take magnesium. It kind of feels
Yeah.
to me as a nation that lots of people are deficient in it. And this is one of the
Yeah.
questions I was going to say to you. I know everybody is different, but are there things like taking vitamin D and B12 in the morning and magnesium at night? Are there things that you think that people should try and take if they feel they need it? I mean, I know people that don't sleep and then sleep better when they do take magnesium.
Exactly. So the whole thing about magnesium is that 98% of your magnesium is in your bones. And so if you measure your magnesium levels in serum, it's not a true reflection of the magnesium levels that you've got in your body. So a lot of the tests that are available that say they're going to assess your magnesium levels aren't that accurate. So that's the first thing about it. The second thing is well, as you said, a lot of people are deficient or have deficits in magnesium. That seems to, well, if you look at the dietary intakes, it's quite low. So that's something that we know irrespective of taking magnesium levels in serum and things like that. So the intake generally in the UK is quite low. There's really good data that demonstrates that things like folic acid, magnesium, vitamin D, if people are low in those sorts of vitamins and minerals, then they tend to have worse sleep. I'm not saying it's causative, but there's association between it. So if you can correct that, then there's studies that demonstrate that people who are deficient in vitamin D sleep worse, people who are and with magnesium and folate. The other thing is that those things like magnesium upregulate melatonin production. And there's also a number of botanicals that do that as well. And the whole thing about melatonin is I did a lot of work with melatonin a few years ago, and I was involved with the registration of a melatonin product. As you know, it's available as a licensed pharmaceutical now. The
But
thing,
not in the
and
UK.
yeah, it is. No, doctors can
Oh,
prescribe it.
but
You
not
can't. It's not as
because I
if
know it off the shelf
no,
in America and in France. You can buy
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We yeah, so basically, melatonin, what people don't realize is the half-life of melatonin is 45 minutes. So if you take it at 11 o'clock at night, it's virtually gone by 12:30. The peak melatonin production in the body occurs at 3 a.m. So by supplementing it, you're not going to increase the levels of melatonin in your body when it's maximum required level. So by using things like vitamin D, folic acid, and things like a number of other botanicals, you can upregulate the production of vitamin D when you need it most.
And are you, when you say botanicals, are you talking about things like lemon balm and chamomile and
Yeah.
tart cherry?
Yeah, things like that, and tart cherry, Ziziphus, which I use in our sleep product, which is Chinese date extract. That's been used for 2,000 years. I love using Ayurvedic, Chinese, traditional remedies in these because we've neglected them for so long, and they've got such a strong tradition of usage in these types of medicinal approaches. And one of the things is that people have always sort of denigrated them is, well, the literature's not in English, so it can't be of any use whatsoever because it's not in English. And one of the things that I love now, and this is, I know it's very topical now, but one of the nations that has done a lot to elevate the use of traditional botanicals is Iran. Because they've been, and I'm not promoting the Iran regime
No,
or
I'm
anything
sure you're
like that,
not.
but because of the embargoes on medication, these guys have had to go back to looking at what they traditionally used in botanicals and all the rest of it. And they've identified the active ingredients in the botanicals that are responsible for, like in saffron, for example. So they're doing a lot of novel research now, looking at how things like saffron, which I love, can improve things like depression and elevate mood and things like that. So they're doing a lot of double-blind placebo-controlled trials now looking at standardized saffron extracts as the Chinese, are doing as well with their Chinese date extracts and all the rest of it. It's in English.
It's in English. Yeah, it's funny because we can translate things, can't we, if we want to?
I know
But
we can now, yeah.
I
Yeah, but the thing is with these traditional remedies, it was, and this comes back to, and I hate to go on, but, if you look at these polyphenols we talked about, traditional Chinese remedies, they they would say use an orange peel, and they wouldn't say, "Oh, just use orange peel." They'd say, "Use orange peel from this area here versus that area there." And if you do that, if you think about, I said about these compounds needed to be in the production of them needed to be induced, then if you've got a hot, arid environment and a wet, moist environment, you're going to get different compounds
yeah.
produced in oranges over here compared to over there.
Well, it's like matcha tea, isn't it? It's from the leaves that are underneath rather than the ones that are on
Exactly.
top.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer
Yeah.
in trying to find something natural if you can.
Yeah.
Metformin has been something that a lot of people are taking that don't have diabetes. And there's the berberine, which is the kind of the plant extract natural alternative. Can you talk about what you think about metformin versus berberine?
I think it's very difficult. One of the things is about with it comes back to this standardization. What is an optimization of dosage and things like that? Obviously, metformin's been around for donkey's years now, and people know what the benefits are. It's still unclear how metformin delivers the benefits that it does. There's a lot of discussion about whether it has an effect on the microbiome.
Yeah.
So nobody really knows how metformin works. Um, and there is some evidence, and it comes, I hate to say it, I hate to bang on about it, but a lot of it comes down to this ages concept. There's some evidence that I think there's some quercetin and another and metformin people have looked at in terms of longevity and ages, and we've got quercetin in our anti-ages
Take that with
compound. So quercetin's a really interesting compound, and it does have effects on ages. I think it's very difficult to compare one with
compare
another.
like, but do you think metformin is something that people can stay on long term a lot more safely than the other weight loss drugs, for instance?
But metformin is great in terms of controlling blood sugar levels. That's its main role.
Look, it's just such a buzzword, longevity, at the moment
It
that
is, and
yeah.
yeah, and we talked earlier before we started about these peptides, and there was an article in the Times on Saturday about it. And a lot of these compounds that people are using have never been tested in humans. It's a bit of cell line research that shows that it might have a benefit. It's okay getting a cell to live a bit longer, but
In your opinion, there isn't enough research done on peptides to be taking them?
and it's an amorphous mass of peptides. They're quite easy to produce. The other interesting thing was just about talking about manufacturing peptides. I was interested when I was looking at Wegovy. Do you know how much industrial solvent it takes to produce 1 kilo of Wegovy?
Obviously not.
14 tons.
Oh my goodness.
From an environmental perspective, producing these peptides is because it's so difficult to synthesize them, quite an expensive process, and it does require it's quite a complicated chemical process.
Wow. That's like the saying, how much water it takes to make a pair of jeans, isn't it? And the impact in the
Yeah,
environment.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Mike, I think I might have to book you for another chat another time. I could chat to you for
Okay.
ages. I want to link to your range of supplements. It's been so interesting finding out about your research and what work
Thank you.
you've put into what you're producing, because it's something that sits differently on the market to what we're normally seeing. And I think that's what's so interesting about what you're doing.
Thanks, Krista.
And yeah, thanks
Thank you
so
very much.
much.
No, thank you for inviting me on your program. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.